Here we go, another episode of Goz On The Go. All the sports talk you need in less than 30 minutes. We got a ton to cover, especially with all the playoff stuff going on. But before we get into it, got to give love to two of our friends who make this whole thing possible. First, Across the Street Pub. Shout out to Greg and Danny and the crew. Big announcement here. And I say big because times are changing. If you were listening last week, we told you that we have trivia 7 to 8:30 all summer long. We're bumping it up a little bit. That dinner crowd, maybe you're stopping in a little bit earlier on Thursday nights, 6:30 to 8. So you can enjoy that summer weather and enjoy trivia with us. So all Thursdays, all summer long, 6:30 to 8 o'clock. I'll be there hosting trivia at the Cross Street Pub on Western Ave. The food's amazing. From the wings to the gyros and more. I'm hearing the compliments continue to get the food, so you stop in, play some trivia. We got a sports round, music. Movies, television, a little mix of everything and more. So stop in, play some trivia with us all summer long. Thursday is Cross the Street Pub. Great place to hang out, enjoy yourself. And we want to give love to our friends over at Mohawk Honda right there in Glenville. Saw my guy John Higgins, and for you who listen to Goz On The Go and getting there with Goz, you probably got the heads up that I was stopping to get some maintenance with this taping and everything else. That's taken care of. Shout out to John. I just missed Greg. He said, yo, what up, guys? This is the message he left for me. So shout out to Greg and Cam McKenna. Brian McKenna I bumped into who said hello. So great to see everybody again. Andy Gelcher was allegedly there. I didn't see him, though. But I know everybody got to know all the crew because they're great people. That true family feel when you got to get in and get your vehicle fixed. So right now, by the way, every dealer wants you to trade in. Shortage of inventory in the market, so you got to trade in the money on your hands. What are you going to do? Mohawk Honda will not only give you top dollar for your trade-in, they have acres upon acres of inventory for you to choose from. The largest inventory of vehicles in the region. That means you can choose the best one for you. Value and selection. More importantly, it's how you're treated, as you just heard from me at Mohawk Honda. Don't feel pressure to buy something from another dealer because they think that's the best. It's not. Mohawk Honda has it for you. The vast selection of vehicles, pre-owned, guaranteed to fit your needs and your lifestyle. This summer, Mohawk Honda is the spot for you to find your new rides because they always go out of their way to please you. Love the crew at Mohawk Honda. Now, let's get into this week's episode of Goz On The Go. If you're watching on our YouTube side, you see that big, fat, new NBA logo, and we got a lot of stuff to cover in the NBA playoffs. We are recording this. Here's how it really went down. So, the Sixers were destroying the Hawks, and I'm like, all right, well, Philadelphia is going to beat Atlanta. There's not much in this game to talk about. So my wife pulled me into the other room while the baby slept and said, hey, let's go through some of these videos from last year because Rex's birthday is next week. So we're watching these old videos on the camera. I'm like, all right, well, Philly blew out Atlanta. Then my buddy Campy's texts and says, are they going to blow this? So I flip it on with about 4, maybe 3.5 minutes to go. And sure enough, Philly chokes it away to Atlanta, watching the end of this game. Now, I was watching a little bit at the start, but the end is what mattered the most. And I love my guy, Bryce Zielinski, huge Philly fan. He is somewhere. Just Atlanta loves the Cleveland Indians. Bryce is in that talk of that friend who I know that may love his team as much as anybody who I know. Sports with a Z and a T is going to be must listen here on Godzilla Media this week. And if you haven't downloaded, subscribe, rate, and review, check out all the good stuff those guys are doing. I bring up Bryce because he's going to hate like the next 2 minutes of what I'm about to do to this poor Philadelphia team. Because this is across the board for Philadelphia, the Sixer franchise. I thought it was hysterical when I showed up to the NBA draft in 2016 and saw the Hinkie died for our sins. Because the trust the process stuff was so stupid and funny, it made it entertaining. And stupid because nobody had done what they had truly done and embraced the suck. I like Michael Carter-Williams. Michael Carter-Williams is a Syracuse guy who was a part of that, who won the Rookie of the Year because he was a part of the process in Philly. But what happened in Game 5 sums up how I felt about 3 people on this franchise for a long time. First, we'll start with Doc Rivers. I said it last year. He got canned by the Clippers. I said, why do we think Doc Rivers is a great coach? Because we know his name? Because he's had success with teams before? Was he really that good with the Boston Celtics? Did he win as many championships as Boston thinks he should have? How about that Clipper team that was stacked? Yes, it's the greatest Clipper teams in franchise history, but they stunk under Donald Sterling. What did you point and say, that's the move? That's how Doc Rivers does it, right? I've never understood the Doc Rivers love in the NBA. I think he's a likable guy. I think people want to hang out with Doc Rivers. He's a fantastic analyst. all that stuff. We're talking about either television side or breaking down the game. But I never got the head coaching thing. What did he do at the end of the game to put Philadelphia in a better spot to win? It didn't happen. So Doc Rivers is to blame. And I'm sure while we're taping this, I wouldn't be shocked if Philly loses this series and that becomes a hot talking point if it's time to fire Doc Rivers. That fast from a coach of the year candidate to maybe being fired. Joel Embiid. Look, I know he was in the mix for the MVP, but I cannot shake the comparisons between him and Greg Oden. Yes, the Portland Trail Blazer #1 overall pick. One of my favorite stats I bring up about people who want to defend Embiid and that how he's become a superstar. And he's great. Like, Joel Embiid out there is tremendous. But he got very fortunate he was on the Philadelphia 76ers and got those opportunities. After 3 seasons in the NBA, do you know that Greg Oden played 50 more games than Joel Embiid? 3 seasons apiece in the league for both of them. 50. After 4 seasons in the NBA, Joel Embiid had played about 15 more games than Greg Oden. 4 seasons into the NBA careers of Joel Embiid and Greg Oden. Embiid played 15 more games. We know what happened to Greg Oden. Got cut from the Blazers, had that weird knee surgery, microfracture, basically was never an impact player again. And you could point to the injury, and he's documented this about some of the partying he did and everything else. But Greg Oden gets kicked out of the league. It's called a bust forever. How do the Philadelphia 76ers treat Joel Embiid, who barely played more than Greg Oden after 4 seasons? A monster contract. So they've always believed no matter truly whatever would have happened, they went all in on Joel Embiid, and Sixer fan thought it finally paid off for him. Where was he at the end of that game? He was hot in the first quarter. I know he got hurt earlier in the series. Where was he in the end? And I'm reading this stat now, and maybe someone's going to tweet me at TomGoss, TOMG, it was easy, and tell me the stat's wrong. But Ben Simmons, did he not shoot the ball in the second half? Like, at all? Did he disappear? The Ben Simmons thing, look, he has been a freak since he's been in high school. He was a can't-miss prospect coming out of LSU. He's the #1 pick. I get all that. But it seems as if nobody ever wanted to criticize Ben Simmons. And this goes back to Dick Vitale for college basketball. I still remember Dickie V took a lot of heat from LSU fan. And there was like a weird rivalry with Dick Vitale and LSU fan. Jordy Culotta, who used to work in Baton Rouge down at 104.5. Interesting, that's the name of it. But Culotta, you can go dig up these tweets with him and Vitale argued about Will Wade. But Vitale took heat because people had said, what do you think about Ben Simmons? He said, I think he disappears in big games. Oh, Dickie V doesn't know. He blah, blah, blah. Dickie V was right. Ben Simmons is 6'10". He's supposed to be the next big thing. Where is he in the fourth quarter? Why isn't Seth Curry? You can't even get the best Curry to shoot shots for you because he's not even. What's Curry doing taking the shots? And Embiid can't make any free throws. Sixer fan, you've seen this set up for a long time. And Sixer fan, maybe like my guy Bryce at ZBryce21, you can talk to him. Maybe say, guys, you're being too tough on because we're talking about 2 of the best talents in the NBA and Simmons and Embiid when they're on. And trust me, when they are on, they're good. But when it's mattered the most throughout their entire careers, Simmons didn't step up for that team in March at LSU back in college. Thinking back now, they didn't make the NCAA tournament. Joel Embiid got hurt, but we never got to see what Embiid could have been for that Kansas team in March. So college examples, pro examples. Doc Rivers the same way. We've got too many examples of the Sixers not finishing it off. It's going to be Game 6. Atlanta's got the lead. But I wouldn't be shocked if Atlanta knocks them out in Game 6 at home. We'll see what happens. But boy, that is an epic choke job by Philadelphia. And there could be changes on the way if they choke away this series against Atlanta. Let's keep rolling in the NBA. The Phoenix Suns, man. How about the Phoenix Suns? That guy pounding the Nuggets fan with the jersey on, screaming out, Suns in 4. I wanted to use the audio and the visual of that cut, but I'm like, you know what? That dude's got enough play. I saw on Instagram that Devin Booker's at least got a DM from him. If you missed it, again, a Suns fan gets in a brawl and just beats the hell out of a Nuggets fan and just screams out Suns in 4. But sure enough, Suns in 4. That's what they did to Denver. They move on to the Western Conference Finals, where they're going to have an opportunity to get to an NBA Finals, depending on how it all breaks down between the Clippers and the Jazz. And by the way, when we're taping this, the Jazz and Clippers are playing, so we're not going to break down that game. But the big news comes for Phoenix involving Chris Paul. Again, another tough thing to try to figure out is what Chris Paul's availability is going to be because of the COVID-19 protocols. Phoenix, if you can go back and listen to a podcast a few weeks ago when we previewed the NBA and NHL playoffs, I told you they were my heart pick. I wanted Philly to go deep because I wanted to root against Brooklyn, and I wanted Phoenix to go deep because they had players like Paul and Booker, DeAndre Ayton, the Phoenix market that's been so close before, not being able to break through. I wanted to see a new team make the move and get in there. They are now the Western Conference favorites, ? And that's why I put the question mark at the end, because Kawhi Leonard allegedly has suffered a torn ACL. No disrespect to Donovan Mitchell, who, again, I feel like that's the ultimate quote because he's putting up right now the second most points in the history of a career in the playoffs, only trailing Michael Jordan. But I believe in Phoenix more. They're a more fun basketball team to watch. I feel like they're more balanced across the board, and Phoenix and Utah have battled during this regular season. And I'm already giving Utah the pass to the Western Conference because of the Kawhi injury. But I got sitting here somewhere on my dashboard outside of my driveway a Clippers Nets futures wager. And we'll get to that a little bit later on. But shout out to the Phoenix Suns. Chris Paul, the impact he's had. He could not miss in the last game before he went to COVID protocols. Do I believe the series will come down to Chris Paul's availability versus the Jazz and the Clippers? The easy answer is yes. But back to what we just talked about involving the Sixers. Chris Paul hasn't proved it come playoff time. I feel like Stu Gatz right now, talking about Chris Paul choking it away in the playoffs. You know what? Phoenix can get by with it. I think Devin Booker can drop 40 a couple times in the series. Even if they don't have Chris Paul because of the question marks involving the Clippers, less question marks involving the Jazz, Phoenix can get this done. Get all the way to the NBA Finals and continue to have these crazy internet memes of Suns in 4. Oh, and by the way, there's a pretty good player in Brooklyn named Kevin Durant. Ooh, man, what a performance he put on. Goodness, Kevin Durant putting it on Milwaukee. And Milwaukee felt like they were in the right spot to get everything done. Like if you're a Buck fan like my buddy Darren, aren't you thinking, what else could we have needed? James Harden is a non-factor. Kyrie's hurt. So 2 of the top 3 big stars are not playing for Brooklyn. You've got Jeff Green out there who's been in this league for a decade plus, and you've got Kevin Durant, who now has the opportunity to take over the game and show he's a super, and he did. What Durant did, if we look back in history and talk about some of the great performances in playoff history, is that in the mix? Now I get it. A Western Conference semifinal match, Eastern Conference semifinal matchup may not exactly look at and say, okay, great performance ever. But if that's the NBA Finals we're talking about it, Conference Finals we're talking about it, that's how good Kevin Durant has been for this Brooklyn Nets team. And we know the narrative around Kevin Durant is that he's soft in the sense of he doesn't like criticism. Some would even argue soft on the court. I wouldn't go that far because I feel like the S word can get pushed around too much by athletes and fans not knowing the work that goes into it. But that sensitivity, we'll use that other S word instead, makes people like myself not root for him. Does he want to be the best player in the world? Does he just want to be talked about as being better than LeBron? Does he want to be talked about as the greatest scorer of all time? Because maybe that's the conversation to be in round 4 of when it's all said and done. He might have the most points ever in the history of this league, depending on how his body holds up. Can he do it by himself? Can he, Kevin Durant, lead this Brooklyn Nets team? I don't know, Blake Griffin's out there and others, to an Eastern Conference title game and beat whoever's on the other side of that bracket, whether it ends up being Philly or Atlanta for the second time in this? I'm telling you, yes. Because why not? Tom Hammerstro, look at the second Levitard reference on this podcast this week. It noted that the difference in points, we're talking about the plus minuses, when Harden, Kyrie, and Durant are on the floor per 100 possessions, and it's just Durant on the floor per 100 possessions, is 0 difference. That's how good Kevin Durant is. Where even when you take those guys off, and I'm talking throughout the entire playoffs, Durant is still able to keep his team in the game and win games for them. I'm not a Kevin Durant fan, and this happens all the time in sports where you find somebody you're not a fan of, but you cannot deny the greatness. That's what Kevin Durant's doing for Brooklyn. He doesn't miss. A 7-footer who's arguably one of the great shooters of all time in the history of this league and taking over games. Boy, you thought Kevin Durant was hard to stand when you heard criticism from people before. Imagine he does this without Harden and Kyrie. And some old school NBA fans would say, that's how you're supposed to do it. One more Levitard reference. Greg Cody from the Miami Herald. Back in my day, that's how NBA stars used to do it. They didn't team up. They did it on their own. A little sneak peek for you here, a little behind the curtain. We got a really cool episode coming up of a podcast called The Bench Warmers. If you haven't heard of The Bench Warmers, they're basically a really cool trivia site where myself and I'll keep my partner's name a secret for now, playing this. And they brought up off the air before we started how this was the worst NHL playoffs ever. The worst NHL playoffs ever. Why? What are we talking about? You've got the New York Islanders taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning. You've got the Montreal Canadiens taking on the Vegas Golden Knights. Why would people presume or think or believe that it's the worst playoffs ever? I thought they were pretty cool matchups. Vegas is a city that loves their team. You got a Canadian team in Montreal that's trying to go back. The Islanders, how passionate that fan base is downstate. And Tampa Bay is the defending Stanley Cup champions. What's wrong with any of these matchups? Maybe it's the sense of no superstar like I mentioned a few weeks ago. It would have been fun to see Nathan McKinnon or Austin Matthews or Connor McDavid, one of these guys, going for those legacy moves. Barry Trotz, is he the biggest star left because of what he did for the Washington Capitals? I guess I'm not as thrilled about it either. And maybe I'm just bitter because the Avalanche are out and they stopped my bid of getting hot in my best play, and I had a future wager. I went all in on the Avalanche game against the Vegas Golden Knights. What an amazing series. The Vegas Golden Knights might destroy Montreal because maybe the hot streak has just ended for the Canadiens. But I loved watching Golden Knights and Avalanche. And maybe that's as simple as it. I wanted to see the Avalanche and the Golden Knights in the Stanley Cup Finals. If we're going to get the New York Islanders, can we get it the Nassau Coliseum, continue to rock? Is it going to be like the old 80s Islanders? Are the Vegas Golden Knights too good? Have they no longer felt like the underdog? They were the underdog when they were expansion franchise, but they don't feel like that. And Marc-Andre Fleury in net. Whew, talking about all-time great. We're talking about a top 3 player in playoff talk. When we're talking about a goalie on the ice, he's incredible. The Canadiens got hot, and I don't see them, if that's how they're going to continue to play, to continue to even compete in this series. And Tampa Bay's already won. I don't have a storyline to hook onto, a player to hook onto. I told you Trotz was the coach. I'm losing out on my interest in the NHL playoffs. And the New York team's in it. I wish I had something else. Someone's got to sell me on it. Because the action between the Golden Knights and Avalanche was great. Maybe I got to give it a few more watches here, but it's weird to think those guys over at the bench warmers is that it's the worst NHL playoffs ever because they're not fans of the teams that were in it. But this is getting as much as I love March Madness, a March Madness feel of the end isn't as exciting as the tournament from the beginning. I need a big-time goal, a big-time hit. Oh, we had tons of fights and suspensions earlier that made it more exciting to the NHL playoffs. We need another big moment to continue to keep my interest. Have the attention span of a mosquito, it seems like at times, but I need something else. NHL playoffs continue to keep me hooked because we don't have the star players or the crazy matchups that have been happening in the past or a huge injury that's going viral or things like that. Hopefully it'll stay competitive. I'm bitter the Avalanche aren't in it. Islanders, keep doing your thing. We'll continue to see if it actually, look, if you like the NHL playoffs at the semifinal spot, you can let me know. But right now it's starting to lose my interest. I feel like I need to put on my best 30 for 30 voice for this. What if I told you Kyler Murray should have won the MVP in the NFL last season? Probably look at me confused. What if I told you that it should have been Matt Nagy as the NFL Coach of the Year last season? Again, you give me a weird look. And why I say that is because both of those teams went 8-8 in the NFL last year. But if someone told you Matt Nagy should be the Coach of the Year, Kyler Murray should be the MVP, you just wouldn't buy it because their team wasn't good enough. I'm struggling with this in the American League right now because I like watching one of these players. I'm frustrated by the other one because of a fantasy baseball situation. But I'm talking about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Shohei Ohtani. We'll start with Ohtani first because that's where the frustration is. Ohtani's numbers are like Babe Ruth, right? We're talking about Babe Ruth. We're talking about a guy who's a top 10 home run hitter, who's also winning games on the mound. This is a player we have truly never seen before in Major League Baseball. He is a freak in the nicest way possible. So he's putting up all these stats, but his Angel team, even without Mike Trout, 2 games below 500. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who I got to see in person in June of 2019 with an awesome bachelor party. Shout out to my guy Dixon, where we get to watch the Blue Jays take on Timmy LaCastro, Auburn, New York's Arizona Diamondbacks in that game. And Vlad Guerrero got up there and smacked one 340 feet off the wall for a single because he was in a home run trot. And then I bring up LaCastro because Vlad was playing third and dogged a ball, hit to third, and LaCastro beat it out and got benched the next day. Look, as fun as Vlad Guerrero Jr. is to smash dingers and hit homers and leading the Triple Crown categories, the Blue Jays are also at 500. So this is where the problem with baseball kind of runs into itself, right? That we're going to congratulate these players who hit 500 because their stats are good, right? And I'd say like hit 500 because, look, it's a different sport. It's not as if the impact of Vlad Jr. or Shohei Ohtani are hurting their teams. It's not as if they should be doing more because we're talking about both of them in the MVP conversation. But no other sport works like that besides baseball. The NBA isn't rewarding teams who go 500 as the best players in the league. They're saying the players that are helping their team win games. Same for the NFL. Now, here's the difference between baseball. It feels like it leans far more towards the most outstanding player in the league than the most valuable player in the league. Because when you talk about MVP, shouldn't we be talking about more players on the Tampa Bay Rays who are winning the most competitive division right now in baseball? I would say the Oakland Athletics, but how often could you right now name any player on the Oakland A's? And the one team, the Chicago White Sox, who are in first place, it feels as if we faced more criticism about the White Sox than anything else. It'd be fun to see a guy like maybe Tim Anderson get in the mix. We've talked about one of the best hitters in the American League in the career he's had. He's always willing to show off his personality. Jose Abreu maybe is in the mix. But those guys are not getting the same type of love because they're not as popular as Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Shohei Ohtani. I'm ready to start changing the way I think about baseball. And I think we all should start doing that too, that it is not the most outstanding player. Although, by the way, I didn't mention the Ohtani thing on fantasy real quick. How can you only play him at one position? Again, it makes zero sense. If I was a guy in fantasy football and I ran in a touchdown and scored a touchdown through the air, I get all the points. But Ohtani doesn't get all the points in pitching and hitting. It's stupid. He would be the most dominant fantasy baseball player ever. Let him run with that on ESPN and Yahoo leagues. Okay, now that rant's over, I got to start leaning towards players who are helping their team win games. I get Ohtani and Vlad Jr. doing the best that they can, but we can't keep looking at these 500 players and think, okay, they're the best. How about most valuable? The actual, give me the WAR if you want, you nerds. I'm leaning towards Jose Abreu and more. I love Vlad Jr. Shohei Ohtani's fun. We got to start changing our mindset when it comes to baseball. It's not the most outstanding. It's the most valuable player award. I still remember being in middle school. I'm talking about the Hazard Street Middle School at Salve, which doesn't even exist anymore. Getting the Sports Illustrated, the chosen one, with a guy from a high school on the cover of Sports Illustrated when it was a big deal back then, and thought, who is this? That this high school junior is on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Who? Of course, it was LeBron James, and I followed his career since and became a LeBron fan, and the rest, as they say, is history. This week, I had to triple check this story. I thought it was fake or it was from a catfish account, but this seems real. That LeBron James went to his son, Bronny James, who also is known as LeBron James Jr. He went to his game, and also at the game was Drake. That's right. The rapper Drake and LeBron James were sitting courtside for Bronny's game for Sierra Canyon. And during the game, of course, LeBron and Drake were going crazy and yelling and screaming. Some have said that they were yelling at the refs. Can you imagine Drake, one of the biggest pop stars, rappers of all time? Truly, I think he actually passed Eminem recently for the most successful rapper of all time. One of the great athletes of all time, LeBron James. And you're officiating a Sierra Canyon game with his son, and you're getting heckled by those two in the front row. What are we doing? Like, I get LeBron. He's excited for his kid. But Drake heckling high school officials? And now Bronny James is going to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated, a la his dad, in the upcoming July edition of SI. for his esports team. I don't know a lot about esports, but I know the team that he plays on is a big deal. And I think Kyler Murray, who we just mentioned, is also going to be on the cover of this. Okay. Like, is the hype too much for these guys like Bronny James? My pal Corey in Greenwich left me a message via Facebook DM, like Levac had always said, be careful with that. And Corey had said, wow, are you ready for Michigan to sign Arch Manning? First Take had a real discussion on the air this month. First Take, an ESPN debate show of whether or not Arch Manning, the son of Cooper Manning, was going to be better than Peyton or Eli. These kids are like 16. And we're putting them on SI. We're talking about it with rappers like Drake. We're having these film sessions of Clemson camps of art. Enough. Like, we got to at least have some type of, we should not get this invested in 15, 16-year-olds playing like this. I was going to say, we have to have some type of thought process of maybe they're too young. Maybe it's now not the time to hype them up, because if we start at 14 or 15, we're going to keep pushing it back to where we're recruiting 6th and 5th grade. I'm turned off by it. I think everybody's just looking for a story and they want to invest quicker than ever before. The hype around Bronny James and Arch Manning. Look, LeBron sums this up well. What are the true expectations for guys like Bronny James and Arch Manning? And I compare it to LeBron because remember, LeBron came in and was the next one, the chosen one. Can he beat Jordan? And unfortunately, we're going to look back at his career. People are going to say that was the criticism throughout his career. He couldn't beat Jordan. How about one of the greats of all time? What if Arch Manning's a multiple-time Pro Bowler, but he's not Peyton or Eli? So it's a disappointing career. What if Bronny James doesn't make it to the league and Bronny James just is a really good college basketball player? There's nothing to be ashamed of. But now the hype around these guys, I thought it was big when I was in middle school in 2002 or 2003. I can imagine. And how unfair it's going to be. How unfair it is right now for the athletes of these kids and these soon-to-be viral sensations and superstars. The only way it does become a little bit more fair, and this is more for the athletes who don't have the famous fathers, name, likeness, and image. We'll have more on that later this summer. Trevor Bauer, Friday night, he is pitching against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Take Bauer, Mr. Spin Rate, talking that smack. I don't know if you've seen the clip on MLB Network of him saying they got it kind of right. Bauer talks a lot. He's got to back it up Friday night against Arizona. I think he does. And we get an all-time great Bauer antics on the mound. Bauer monster for the Dodgers against Arizona. So take the Dodgers, just a money line bet on that. And for the U.S. Open, I love golf odds. My dad and I were talking about it all the time. 25 to 1, 50 to 1, 75 to 1. I get it's hard, obviously. You have such a massive field. You're trying to pick one winner to see where it goes. Maybe in years from now, I'm going to try to have a new strategy picking golf. Maybe top 5 finishers or head-to-head plays, thing like that. Louis Oosthuizen. How about all top 25 finishes at the U.S. Open since 2015? Louis, I've seen him dancing around 45 to 1 to 70 to 1. Have some fun with that. Toss $10 on. I have $5-10 on some of these golfers to make the U.S. Open fun because of those monster paydays. So, again, Dodgers, Diamondbacks, kind of an easy play there. Diamondbacks stink right now, but I think Bauer's going to do great. And have fun with somebody at the U.S. Open for that play. All right, that's it. This week's episode of Goz On The Go covered a lot of stuff. We are moving fast. Also, please be aware that we have a very fun guest, very well-known guest coming up on Monday's edition of Getting There with Goz. If you want to find out who it's going to be, Instagram, Getting There with Goz, at Tom Goz, TOMGOZZ. We're going to announce that guest Friday afternoon. Until then, talk to you next week.